There are all these unwritten rules that dictate how entire societies talk. And you might not even have a name for it, but I promise you follow these rules every single day. The concept is called diglossia, and trust me, once I explain it, you are going to start seeing it absolutely everywhere. I mean, just think about it for a second. The email you send to a professor, it's probably formal, carefully constructed sentences, proper grammar. But the text you send to your best friend, it's probably loaded with slang, abbreviations, and a ton of emojis. Of course you switch. You just naturally adapt your language to the situation, probably without even thinking about it. While here's the cool part. That little personal switch you do, it's just a small-scale version of what entire societies do all the time. And it's not random at all. It actually follows a pretty predictable pattern with really clear rules. And that pattern has a name, Diglossia. So before we dive into the super official definition, let's frame this in a way that's way easier to get our heads around. Just imagine that you have two totally different languages hiding inside the one you think you speak every day. Think of your language like a wardrobe, okay? You've got your tuxedo language. It's formal, it's elegant, and you only break it out for those really special, important occasions. And then you've got your jeans and t-shirt language. This one's comfortable, it's casual, and it's what you live in day to day. You wouldn't wear a tuxedo to just chill at home, and you definitely wouldn't wear a t-shirt to a fancy state dinner, right? All right, now let's see how that whole wardrobe analogy translates into the official academic concept. Sociolinguists have a specific framework for our tuxedo and t-shirt languages. They call them the high and the low varieties. And here it is, the classic definition. This was first introduced to the English-speaking world by a sociolinguist named Charles A. Ferguson, way back in 1959. So diglossia is a pretty stable situation where a community uses two different versions of the same language, but for completely different jobs. And it's not really a choice. It's more like a rule everyone just understands. So this is the crucial part, how these varieties are kept separate. The high variety, or H for short, that's your tuxedo. It's the language used in government, in literature, and big university lectures. It's the one you have to learn in school. The low, or L, variety, that's your jeans and t-shirt. It's the language of home, of your friends, of haggling at the market. It's the very first language you ever learn, your mother tongue. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. It happens all over the world. These examples are actually the ones Charles Ferguson originally studied. So in many Arab countries, the formal written language is classical Arabic. That's the high variety. But at home, people speak very different local dialects, like Egyptian Arabic. That's the low variety. It's a similar deal in Switzerland. Standard German is for school and books, but out on the street and at home, everybody's speaking Swiss German. So what makes a situation truly diglossic? I mean, it's not just about having a formal and an informal style. Ferguson actually identified a specific set of features that really define these unwritten rules. This breaks it down perfectly. First up, function. The H and L versions have totally separate jobs. You just don't use the H variety to chat with your friends. Second, prestige. The H variety is always seen as the real or correct language, while the L variety is often looked down on, sometimes even by the people who speak it. Third, acquisition. You learn L at home, naturally, but you have to learn H at a teacher's desk in school. And finally, standardization. The H variety is all buttoned up with official grammar books and dictionaries, while the L variety is mostly just spoken, rarely written down. Ferguson's model was a huge deal, a real game changer. But other linguists pretty quickly realized, hey, maybe this idea could be applied even more broadly. Like, what if the two varieties weren't even related at all? And this is where another brilliant sociolinguist, Joshua Fishman, comes into the picture. He argued that the most important thing wasn't whether the languages were related, but that they had separate functions. For Fishman, a diglossic situation could totally involve two completely different languages. A great example is in Paraguay, where Spanish is used for government and the indigenous language Guarani is used for daily life. He called this extended diglossia. Okay, so to make this super clear, Fishman created this simple but really powerful grid. It's a fantastic tool that connects the big societal rule, diglossia, with an individual skill, bilingualism. Let's break it down. Take a look at that top left box, both diglossia and bilingualism. That's our Paraguay example. Society has clear rules for using Spanish and Guarani, and most individuals can actually speak both. Now, let's jump down to the bottom left, diglossia without bilingualism. Here, the society has clear language roles, but the individuals are not bilingual. A classic example is pre-revolutionary Russia. The elite spoke French for all the high-function stuff, while the peasant spoke Russian for everyday life. Those two groups rarely talked to each other, let alone spoke each other's language. It's an amazing tool for analyzing how languages really work in the wild. But what happens when a society is juggling more than just a high and a low? Well, sometimes things get even more layered, creating a kind of three-tiered system that linguists call triglossia. Let's take a look at this diagram of Tanzania. It is a perfect case of what's called triglossia. At the very top, you've got English as the high language for things like international business and higher education. Then, in the middle, you have Swahili. Now, Swahili is high compared to local languages, but it's low compared to English. And then at the very bottom, you've got all the different local languages used for everyday life in the villages. See how Swahili is playing both high and low roles? It all just depends on the context. All right, to bring all these ideas home, let's zoom in on a single, incredibly complex case study, the linguistic situation in Bangladesh. So, the Bangla language isn't just one monolithic thing. This chart shows a basic split. On the written side, you have Sadhu Bhasa, which is a very old-school, formal style, and then Cholito Bhasa, which is the modern standard. Then on the spoken side, you have that same Cholito Bhasa used by educated speakers. And then you have Anchalek Bhasa, which are all the different regional dialects people speak at home with their families. So because you have all these different layers, the situation in Bangladesh doesn't fit neatly into that classic high versus low model. It's a real, living, breathing example of a much more intricate system. This model really gives us the clearest picture of what's going on. At the very top, you've got Sadhu Bhasa. Think of it as the super formal, high-prestige written form, used for things like legal documents. It is a pure H variety. Down at the bottom, you have the regional dialects, the Anchalek Bhasa. Those are pure L varieties. And right there in the middle, you have Cholito Bhasa. It acts as the L variety when you compare it to the super formal Sadhu, but it acts as the H variety for most educated speakers when they compare it to their local dialects. It is a perfect real-world example of that overlapping triglossic model we just saw. So there you have it, the tuxedo and the t-shirt, the high and the low. Once you understand these hidden rules of diglossia, you really do start hearing language in a whole new way. So the final question is for you. Think about your own community, your own world. Can you spot the unwritten rules? Where's the H and where's the L?